I spent most of my life building something that no one in my family truly understood. When people think about success, they imagine luxury cars, huge mansions, and expensive parties. But I never cared about showing off. I believed in quiet success, the kind where your work speaks for itself, while you live simply and observe the world around you. My name is Margaret Lawson, and for more than 30 years, I built a company from the ground up. It started in a tiny office with peeling paint and secondhand furniture. Back then, I worked 18 hours a day, often sleeping on the office couch because I couldn't afford to go home and lose time commuting. Slowly, painfully, that little company grew. A few employees turned into dozens, dozens turned into hundreds. By the time I was 60, Lawson Logistics had become a multi-million-dollar company operating in several states. But if you saw me walking down the street, you would never guess it. I still drove the same modest car I bought 10 years earlier. I lived in a comfortable but simple house. I wore practical clothes and rarely talked about money. My daughter, Rebecca, never liked that. Rebecca grew up during the years when my company was expanding rapidly. I tried to give her everything she needed: a good education, stability, opportunities I never had. But somewhere along the way, she started believing that money was the most important thing in life. When she was young, she admired my work ethic, but as she got older, admiration slowly turned into resentment. "You work too much," she used to say. "I'm building something for our future," I would answer. But she never seemed satisfied. After she graduated college, Rebecca got a decent job in marketing. It wasn't a bad career, but she never had the patience for slow progress. She wanted success immediately. Luxury apartments, designer clothes, expensive vacations. When those things didn't come fast enough, she blamed everyone else, especially me. When I turned 65, I finally decided to step back from the daily operations of my company. I didn't sell it. I simply appointed a professional CEO and kept my position as the silent majority owner. For the first time in decades, I had time to rest. Rebecca suggested I move in with her and her husband Daniel. "It will be good for you," she said. "You shouldn't live alone at your age." I thought it sounded nice, a chance to reconnect with my daughter, so I agreed. At first, things were pleasant. Rebecca had a beautiful house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Daniel worked in finance and seemed polite enough. But small changes began almost immediately. Rebecca started making little comments. "Mom, you really should buy better clothes. Mom, you need to upgrade your car. It's embarrassing. Mom, people expect more from someone your age." I usually just smiled and ignored it, but the tone kept changing. One evening, I overheard Rebecca talking to Daniel in the kitchen. "She doesn't even have that much saved," Rebecca said quietly. "I don't know how long we're going to have to support her." I stood in the hallway, frozen. Support me? I had enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life several times over. But Rebecca didn't know that. I had never told her. To her, she was just a retired woman with a modest pension, and apparently a burden. A few weeks later, things became worse. Rebecca started asking questions about my finances. "How much do you have saved? Did you plan for retirement properly? Are you expecting us to take care of you long term?" Her tone wasn't curious. It was irritated. One night during dinner, everything finally exploded. Rebecca slammed her fork onto the plate. "This isn't working," she said. Daniel looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. "What isn't working?" I asked calmly. "You living here," she said. The words hit harder than I expected. "You take up space, you don't contribute to bills, and honestly, Mom, it feels like we're raising another child." I stared at her. A child? After everything? Daniel shifted awkwardly. "Rebecca, maybe that's a little—" "No," she interrupted. "I'm just being honest." Then she looked directly at me. "You're a burden." The word hung in the air like poison. For a moment, I felt something inside me crack. But I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I simply nodded. "I understand," I said quietly. Rebecca seemed relieved. "I think it would be best if you found somewhere else to live." That night, I packed my suitcase. As I walked out the door the next morning, Rebecca barely looked up from her phone. Daniel at least had the decency to look guilty. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Simple, quiet, peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. But Rebecca's words kept echoing in my mind. "You're a burden." For several months, I lived quietly. Then, one day, while walking through my building's lobby, I met Thomas. Thomas was the building's janitor. He was in his early 40s with tired eyes but a warm smile. "Good morning, ma'am," he said every day. Unlike most people, he actually took the time to talk. He asked how I was doing. He carried my groceries when he saw me struggling. Once, when I slipped on the stairs, he helped me up and insisted on making sure I was okay. He never asked for anything, never expected anything, just kindness. One afternoon, we sat in the lobby talking. Thomas mentioned he had 2 children and worked 2 jobs just to support them. Despite that, he never complained. "You know," he said, "life isn't about money. It's about how you treat people." His words stayed with me. Months passed. Then one day my lawyer called me. "Margaret," he said, "it might be time to update your will." And suddenly I knew exactly what I wanted to do. A week later, Rebecca called me. She sounded unusually cheerful. "Mom, we haven't talked in a while. Maybe you could come over for dinner?" I almost laughed, but I agreed. When I arrived, Rebecca and Daniel greeted me warmly. Too warmly. During dinner, Rebecca finally said what she really wanted. "Mom, we were thinking, since you're getting older, maybe we should help manage your finances." There it was. Daniel added carefully, "just to make things easier for you." I smiled politely. I appreciate the concern, but inside, I had already made my decision. 2 months later, my lawyer gathered everyone in his office. Rebecca sat confidently beside Daniel. She clearly expected good news. The lawyer opened the envelope. "This is the last will and testament of Margaret Lawson." Rebecca leaned forward eagerly. The lawyer continued. "Margaret Lawson leaves full ownership of Lawson Logistics with all assets and holdings to Thomas Rivera." Rebecca blinked. "Who?" The lawyer looked up. "The janitor of her apartment building." The room exploded. Rebecca stood up. "This has to be a joke." But it wasn't. Thomas, sitting quietly in the corner, looked completely stunned. Rebecca turned to me. "You gave everything to a janitor?" I met her eyes calmly. "Yes." Her face turned red with anger. "But I'm your daughter." I nodded slowly. "And he treated me like family." The room fell silent. For the first time in her life, Rebecca had nothing to say.